Hello, everyone, and welcome to Module 3 of our video lesson 4, Assessment Making Learning Visible. It's wonderful to see you all here again. Well, I'm Vanusa Palacio, and in the last module, we talked about how assessment can help us make learning visible to our students. And in this module, we'll talk about how to deliver the assessment results or feedback. Well, the assessment for learning model is only as good as the quality of feedback provided to students. Successful assessment for learning strategies hinge on the nature of feedback, its content, and the way it is received and used by our students. Many adults can still remember feedback they received from teachers a long time ago, and not always for the best reasons. A few remarks or comparisons with other siblings or classmates do little to promote learner confidence. Comments such as, "You are never gonna be your sister," or "I'm surprised he was such a bright lad," can be destructive and can manifest themselves in learners becoming disengaged. Generalized comments that mean nothing to the learner do not help to promote improvement in individuals' work. Comments such as, "There are some good bits and some bad bits in this piece of work. Keep going, keep up the great work," only serve to leave the learner confused and do not identify areas for improvement. Nor do they offer practical advice on the required remedial work to overcome shortcomings. Ultimately, feedback should help learners improve a specific activity. When feedback provides correction or improvement in a piece of work, it is valued by learners and acts as an incredible motivator. Remember, teachers must genuinely demonstrate that they believe that all learners can learn and improve, but the improvements must be measured against their previous performance, not that of others. Learners need to be able to trust the teacher. Explaining the assessment criteria before the work is done will demonstrate that there is no hidden agenda. Feedback should be something that learners look forward to receiving, and not because it gives praise and offers false hope of success, but because it contains honest, professional judgments that clearly articulate to learners at the appropriate level. It should be a commendation for what they have done well, coupled with constructive advice and guidance on how to improve areas of their work that still need developing. But what exactly is feedback? Well, feedback is providing information to an individual which focuses on their performance or behavior. Feedback should be delivered in a positive way and lead to action to affirm or develop an individual's performance or behavior. It should not be of a personal nature and should focus on hard data, facts, or observed examples of evidence. Now, what are the types of feedback we teachers can give our students? Well, there is affirmation feedback. Affirmation feedback is provided as soon as possible after a performance has been observed. So, for example, "Well done, Maria, you used the simple presence to talk about routines in this task. Well done." Developmental feedback. Developmental feedback is used when you identify an area of improvement and suggest future action. So, "Maria, next time you talk about routines, remember to use the third person S in affirmative sentences for he, she, and it." Okay? Shall we try? Effective feedback. Effective feedback is tailored to meet the needs of the individual and is directly linked to observable evidence, either a learner's written or practical work or a performance of a given task. So it focuses on individual action points. Effective feedback deals with one point at a time. So, for example, if you see that during a performance, a student is not using the third person S for he, she, and it in the simple present, you may want to deal with this specific aspect by providing students with more practice, or the students with more practice, or offering students extra practice after class. Okay? Well, these are the types of feedback we teachers can give our students. But what are the benefits of feedback? Well, there are many benefits. The first one is progress. Progress is made when learners know and understand what they need to do to improve and are given time to undertake the required action to bring about an improvement in their work. Achievement. As a result of progress being made in each teaching and learning session, opportunities for learners to achieve will increase. Learners handing work in on time. Work being handed in and the return of marked work with feedback is a two-way contract. The dates for handing in and returning marked work should be adhered to by both parties. If feedback is valued, it will promote the desired effect. Work is handed in on time. Learner confidence. Effective feedback which recognizes what the learner has done well and instigates further progress promotes learner confidence. Motivation. Motivation is enhanced when learners can see for themselves that they are improving as a result of taking the action recommended in the feedback. And attendance. When feedback is valued and worth receiving, learners are encouraged to attend lessons, classes, and timekeeping does not become an issue anymore. Well, you can give feedback two ways. You can give oral feedback or written feedback. Well, when you give oral feedback or when learners receive oral feedback, they are in contact with their teacher, whether it's consciously or subconsciously. Learners sometimes do not class informal discussion with their teachers as feedback, but this can often be the most valuable form of information where hints and tips for improvement are shared with learners and vocational tricks of the trade are imparted by vocational experts while monitoring learner activities in an effective learning environment. It is widely believed that oral feedback has a greater impact on learners' work than written feedback, possibly because most oral feedback is provided instantly or within a very short period of time of an activity taking place or a piece of work being generated. If teachers are observed delivering a teaching and learning lesson, they are keen to receive feedback as soon as possible after the completion of the observation. If they are told it will be provided at the end of term, it will have minimal impact or effect on their performance when the feedback is eventually provided, as the experience of delivering will have faded along with missed opportunities for learning. So, in general, teachers need to build in feedback to learners as an important element of each lesson as part of effective lesson planning, whether it is group or individual progress. Teachers need to share the structure of the lesson with learners so they know what's going to happen. Teachers need to encourage learners to take notes when oral feedback is being given. Teachers need to provide opportunities within each session for learners to absorb the feedback they have received. Teachers need to encourage learners to take action, to plan an action plan using targets based on feedback received. Teachers need to ensure learners do not leave any session without knowing how well they have performed. And teachers need to demonstrate that they genuinely believe that all learners can learn and improve against their previous performances. Well, what about written feedback? Well, even the most reluctant learners want and value assessment feedback. Teachers should never say anything in writing that they would not say to a learner's face. They should focus on feeding back on the quality of work and not on the person to minimize the possibility of personality issues coming into play. Personal comments such as, "You are lazy and this has reflected in the quality of your work," is not helpful and only serve to distract from the content of the feedback. They also create a barrier between teachers and learners, resulting in the learners digging in their heels and refusing to act on the teacher's advice, even though it's their work which will suffer. As with oral feedback, teachers should use only the assessment criteria as defined in the briefing of the task on which to base the assessment. To mark learners down for not doing something that was not a requirement stipulated in the initial briefing is unfair and will only serve to promote mistrust. Standardized feedback sheets on which a teacher details written information on assessment decision are often well received by learners, particularly when they are used by all teachers across the institution. A common approach to written feedback in terms of cross-institutional document is advisable, as is a standard turnaround period for work to be assessed and feedback to be formulated and provided to learners. So teachers need to compile a standardized feedback sheet that has general agreement across the institution. They need to define the length of time that learners will have to wait for their work to be returned. Teachers need to be consistent in their assessment decisions and ensure there is no favoritism. Teachers need to use the assessment criteria and mark against the requirements set out in this criteria. Teachers need to make sure that handwritten feedback is legible and information presented is set at an appropriate level. Teachers need to evaluate what has been done well and provide praise while ensuring it is not condescending. And teachers need to highlight the areas of work which need further development. Well, this is it as far as feedback goes. This is the end of module 3. And in our next module, we'll be talking about a few examples of assessment activities we can do with our students so that we can have students see their progress and we can make learning visible to students. Bye, see you.